Hey everybody, what is going on? Fallout here, and the TWAB just came out today, as of 5/16/2019, and I think it's worth talking about. If you haven't read it yet, Bungie is pretty much laying out the smackdown on many popular weapons, giving them heavy nerfs as we go into Season of Opulence. If you want to, you can click the link down below in the video description, and we can go through the TWAB together, or you can just kind of listen along while I talk about each weapon on the table. First up, we have the Whisper of the Worm, everyone's favorite exotic sniper rifle used to cheese PvE activities. I'm not really sure if this nerf or any of these actually are going to be surprising to anyone. They're definitely potentially upsetting if you really enjoy using these weapons, but again, upsetting is kind of different from surprising. The TWAB reads, Whisper of the Worm was already adjusted in Season of the Drifter, but an exotic that can generate an infinite amount of heavy ammo is still a gigantic outlier and renders many weapons irrelevant for certain encounters. No crap. While exotics are intended to be powerful and novel, bypassing the ammo economy can tend to force us to adjust enemies to compensate. This effectively results in sniper rifles as a whole being punished because of Whisper's unique ammo ability. As a result, we're removing the ammo generation ability so that we can increase the effectiveness of all other snipers that don't have an endless ammo supply. TLDR, the exotic perk White Nail, is going to pull ammo from reserves now, rather than creating it out of thin air. Also, reserve ammunition is going to be bumped up to 18 without ammo reserve perks on your armor. You know, I think Bungie is in this weird place where they want exotics to feel good and fun and useful, but they don't really know how to keep them from becoming too crazy. And the Whisper is a pretty good example of that. I think most people really enjoy the unlimited ammo regeneration that the Whisper currently gives you, and I think nerfing it is going to definitely hurt the viability and bring it down, but it might bring it down too hard to a point where I'm not sure if anyone's going to actually use the Whisper anymore. Because think about it, having ammo pulled directly from your reserves is really cool, but that's not something really strong enough to be considered an exotic perk. We already have that via the Warlock exotic boots, the Lunafaction boots, and the Titan Rally Barricade. Most fire teams in PvE use those abilities anyway to continually reload their weapons automatically, so what does the Whisper of the Worm now bring to the table? Moving on, next on the chopping block, we have the Sleeper Simulant. The reduction of bounced shot damage for Sleeper Simulant is already present on several important enemies. We are now making this reduction part of the weapon. TLDR, Bungie wants to tone down the ricochet damage on bosses in the game. They're also modifying precision behavior, quote unquote. Total damage is unchanged, but non-precision shots are significantly more forgiving. Again, I understand why Bungie is making the nerfs that they're making. They want to make boss encounters more varied because people are using pretty much the same weapons over and over when going into a PvE boss fight. I'm just, again, kind of worried that doing this too much might hurt the overall fun of certain boss encounters, because I like using really powerful weapons to just shred a boss in half. But I mean, I guess we'll see. And on that note, we move on to the Lord of Wolves. As I'm sure some of you know, I'm not wildly fond of the Lord of Wolves in PvP, because it's a shotgun, but it's not really a shotgun, if you know what I mean. It's basically a pulse rifle. In PvE though, the Lord of Wolves, it has great DPS against a whole host of enemies. It's just a fantastic DPS machine. Bungie has recognized that DPS potential, and the TLDR there is that they are reducing the PvE damage by 20%. That is a big number. In addition to that, the Release the Wolves perk, which by the way should 100% be called Release the Hounds, will no longer trigger automatically on a kill. Instead, the perk is now going to be triggered by holding down the reload button, similar to the Fundamentals perk on the Hardlight and Borealis. If that weren't bad enough, PvE damage and range bonuses on this effect have been removed and replaced with a universal damage bonus instead. Does anybody else feel that when Bungie puts up something on the Nerf block that they tend to sometimes overdo things. I think the recent Nova Warp nerf definitely comes to mind. They take everything under the sun that could potentially be a problem with the weapon, or the class, or the whatever, and then maybe they tear it apart too much? I'm pretty much wondering if anyone is going to be using the Lord of Wolves at all in a PvE DPS perspective after this nerf. Again, time will tell, but this one is looking grim. Next up, we have the Ace of Spades. You know, I found the description on the TWAB particularly funny about the Ace. They write, Ace of Spades is pretty hot in the Crucible. Now, if you're reading that and you are scratching your head so hard that your hair is coming out, it's because they left out the part where they should have said on PC. Literally, almost nobody uses the Ace of Spades on console. I don't think the weapon has even managed to break into the top 5 weapons used in PvP on console ever since the introduction of the Luna's Howl. I will give it to him though, the Ace of Spades is really definitely on a tear in PC PvP, due mostly to the no bloom and massive recoil reductions offered by mouse and keyboard. The biggest change with Memento Mori, which is the exotic perk on the weapon, essentially the Ace's version of Kill Clip, is that now the perk will go away if you stow or change the weapon. I guess that change could go either way. If you play on PC and you're really tired of the Ace being everywhere, I guess this would be a good change for you. They are also toning down the PvP damage buff of Memento Mori to prevent two-tapping Guardians, something that Bungie is apparently very against, as evident by the Luna and Not Forgotten nerf. They've mentioned that you will need at least 4 resilience to now survive being two-tapped by any Guardian with the one-eyed mask when the perk is active. And now we move on to exotic armor. Several pieces are getting nerfed, and they are all surrounding the overall theme of Bungie wanting to change certain exotics that are too generous in terms of generating additional super energy when being used. Skull of Dire Ahamkara, the Orpheus Rigs, and Phoenix Protocol are chief among those exotic pieces of armor that are getting changed. And I can definitely see why they're doing that. The Skull of Dire Ahamkara, for sure. Back when I played more of The Reckoning, you could essentially go across the entire bridge throwing non-stop Nova Bombs left and right. It really does defeat the purpose of maybe using other exotic armor if you happen to be a Warlock. As long as Bungie doesn't nerf these pieces of armor too hard, will probably be okay. The Shards of Galanor and Ursa Furiosa had their super gain caps reduced to be in parity with other super exotic changes, and the Guisan Vest had its energy reduced from 15% to 8% for killing 1 to 2 Guardians. Man, the poor Guisan Vest cannot catch a break, but you know what? That piece of armor has scarred me in PvP for long enough, and it can go to hell. You know, I have to say, I find it very interesting that Bungie is concerned with the issue of people regenerating their super too quickly and the fact that it might possibly be game-breaking. Yet nowhere in the TWAB did Bungie mention the current problem in PvP going on with super mod stacking, something I and many other PvP players have been extremely vocal about on social media. If you don't really know what I'm talking about, there is an armor mod in the game called the Super Mod. Now, I myself have recommended people use this in comp to try and rank up because it is by far and away the best option overall out of every armor mod to put on your gear in the context of PvP. You see, you can stack on 5 super mods at the same time, and there are pretty much no diminishing returns. Because of how powerful supers are in the current PvP sandbox, you have to be crazy to go into comp without any super mods on your armor. For those who have grinded out their Not Forgotten, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because almost every player on almost every team that you fight against at high level comp is going to have a buttload of super mods on their armor. To use Bungie's own terminology, they felt that certain pieces of exotic armor are increasingly becoming must-pick gear choices. That is exactly how I feel about putting super mods on my armor currently in the comp PvP meta. Using any other armor mod choice is crazy to me. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm kind of shocked that they acknowledge it's kind of a situation in PvP with exotic armor, but they are kind of not acknowledging that it is definitely a situation currently in PvP. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we will hear more from them on that issue moving forward. But I'm gonna be honest, at this point, I'm probably not gonna hold my breath. Anyway, that's all she wrote for the TWAB. Do me a favor, go down into the comment section and let me know your thoughts on these upcoming changes and nerfs for Season of Opulence. Are you with them or are you against them? If you're following Bungie on Twitter, you probably know that so far, the overwhelming majority of replies to the TWAB that has been tweeted out were pretty negative. So I'm definitely wondering if my own little YouTube community feels the same way, or maybe not. While you're down there in the comment section, come on, do me a favor, click the like button and go ahead and click subscribe if you haven't done so already. Helps me out a ton, helps my channel grow, and I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.